What is up, Dynasty Leaguers? Welcome back to another DLF YouTube channel video. Today's video is just going to be the final wrap-up piece, talking through all of the free agent movers from the 2021 offseason. I've already done videos on the quarterback and tight end position, the running back position, and then the last one is this massive wide receiver free agent class that we need to run through and talk through the Dynasty implications of people moving, of people staying, what this could potentially look like for 2022 and moving forward, because a lot of these guys sign one-year deals. So a lot of these people are just going to be back in this free agency market next year, which could make things really, really interesting. So with that all being said, let's get right into the video. So I'm just going to get right into it here. I feel like this video might be a little bit long, hopefully not as long as the running back one, but we have a handful of names to run down and talk through. We can start at the very top. We can start with the biggest one of this group, and that is Kenny Golladay signing a 4-year, $72 million contract with the New York Giants. This was a move that was kind of in the works for basically like a week. It felt like Kenny Golladay was being courted by the Ravens. I heard rumors that he was being courted by the Bears, potentially going to the New York Giants, which he actually ended up signing with the New York Giants. So this is a really interesting move, both for Golladay and for Daniel Jones and the rest of the Giants offense. First of all, for Kenny Golladay, I feel like this is a net negative for him. Obviously, it's not Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford is a very good quarterback. Daniel Jones is not Matthew Stafford. The positive, though, for Kenny Golladay is that he is still going to be at least the wide receiver one on the Giants, like he was the wide receiver one in Detroit. So there's at least that. I'm not sure if the target share is going to necessarily be the same, but what is very nice is Daniel Jones is a deep ball thrower. He does like to chuck the ball a lot, like Matthew Stafford does, and Kenny Golladay is very much a vertical threat at the wide receiver position on the outside. So the air yards should still be there for Kenny Golladay, even if he gets 120, 130 targets. If he's like a 70 for 1,000 guy with 6, 7, 8 touchdowns, that's going to be very solid for fantasy. Maybe not at like wide receiver one numbers, like what you might expect him to have had in Detroit with Stafford, but still very solid wide receiver two numbers, kind of like how Mike Evans was and other players like that in that range of like a high wide receiver two. So we can talk about this from a Giants standpoint. Daniel Jones, I think this is obviously a bump up for him. This is the first legitimate wide receiver weapon that he's had since joining the New York Giants, and so it's an immediate improvement for him. A lot of people are talking about this as a Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs type of improvement, maybe even a Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins type of improvement. I'm not necessarily sure that I'm going that far with that. I think that's very dangerous. Josh Allen had an outlier type of a, increase in production and just overall got better. Like his accuracy just got better. Everything just seemed to really get better. And I don't think we can project that to happen to Daniel Jones, because that was just such an outlier, weird type of improvement for a quarterback, even from year 2 to year 3. And I can't put that on Daniel Jones. Jones does have problems throwing the ball in terms of interceptions, with turnovers, with fumbles, all that stuff. It might be because he's trying to do too much, but Kenny Golladay coming in here gives some upside and some hope for Daniel Jones, a guy who had a couple solid games in his rookie year, and that hype kind of died down with his last year. But a lot of injuries. Didn't have Saquon Barkley all last year. Golden Tate really not being the old Golden Tate, no longer on the team anymore. Sterling Shepard not really doing much. Evan Ingram not really doing much. Darius Slayton not really doing much. So Kenny Golladay coming in is very good for Daniel Jones, and I would more like to comp this to a Mitch Trubisky, Allen Robinson type of situation and duo, rather than a Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs type of duo, right? Mitch Trubisky had his weeks. He had those times where he would throw 6 touchdown passes, other times where he'd just be a very solid 275 and 2 kind of guy. I think Daniel Jones can absolutely do that. There's also times, though, where Mitch Trubisky is not even a quarterback 2 on the week. He's just like the quarterback 27, just really put up a dud for you in fantasy, and Daniel Jones can absolutely do that. But Allen Robinson is a pretty solid wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 on most weeks just out of sheer target volume. That could be what we see from Kenny Golladay and Daniel Jones. I'm holding on to Golladay. I'm not really trying to sell him. If somebody's trying to buy thinking that this is like the best thing ever for Kenny Golladay, I'll absolutely sell him high right now. Daniel Jones, I think, is an interesting quarterback 2 to have. Hopefully he's your quarterback 3 in your Superflex teams, but I would not really be looking to sell him now either, because I think people kind of know what he is, unless obviously you're selling him high. And in that case, I would absolutely do that as long as you're getting a quarterback back for sure. So that is Kenny Golladay. The next one that we can talk about, at least the next biggest name to sign, is JuJu SmithSchuster, signing a 1-year, $8 million deal going back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I was super happy about this because I don't know if the process was actually right, but I've been saying for like a year that JuJu is going to be a Steeler in 2021 again. It seemed like he was going to leave, didn't necessarily get the offer and the contracts that he wanted, so then decided just to go back to Pittsburgh, turned down less money from Pittsburgh. He got offered more money from Baltimore, even Kansas City as well. Just decided to go with the solid $8 million deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers and go with that. And I actually think that's a very smart deal for JuJu SmithSchuster, just to go back, play with a quarterback that you're already used to, be in the same situation and role that you're already used to, produce like he did last year, almost 100 receptions. Didn't really have the yards to go with it, but if he's a 100 reception guy, 1,000 yards could definitely be well within the range of opportunity as well. And he had 9 touchdowns last year. Like, that was pretty productive for JuJu SmithSchuster, a guy that a lot of people really don't want to call the wide receiver 1 on that offense. So I'll take it as a Steelers fan. I think I would take it as a JuJu SmithSchuster manager as well in Dynasty. I really, really like it from his standpoint, where he can just stay for another year and then re-enter free agency next year when the salary cap goes back up. Because I think that's what a lot of these wide receivers noticed, was there's a really good wide receiver class in 2021 in this rookie draft class. The COVID situation knocked down the salary cap about $18 million or something like that. So that impacted a whole bunch of contracts in free agency all this year. And so these wide receivers weren't getting the deals that they wanted. So they said, you know what? We'll just take these $1 million deals, kind of take a prove it deal, and then see what goes on next year. My cat just decided that he wanted to be in this video, so he's back there playing with his cardboard. That's like his thing. That's what he wants to do. So we're just going to let him roll with it, right? Right, buddy? Okay. So next big name that we can talk about off of JuJu SmithSchuster then is Marvin Jones. I think a pretty solid name for this wide receiver class. Signed a 2-year, $12.5 million deal with Jacksonville. I think this was actually very interesting. Marvin Jones was a pretty solid wide receiver for Detroit with Matthew Stafford as well too. A vertical kind of guy. A lot of people thought that he was going to go and follow Matthew Stafford to the LA Rams, which would have been a really interesting pairing. I don't think that would have really been super good for Marvin Jones per se, because of Kupp and Woods there as well. But he goes to Jacksonville, joins DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault, and obviously he's going to get Trevor Lawrence as his quarterback for the next few years. So that's going to be a really interesting pairing for him. For Dynasty, I'm not really sure overall how this actually works. A lot of people love DJ Chark. A lot of people love Laviska Shenault. And Trevor Lawrence coming in is just going to add more hype onto this whole entire wide receiver class. Marvin Jones being like outside the top 60 wide receivers in ADP right now is really tough, because his production on a weekly basis is going to net you probably more on your roster than it would be to trade him right now. Although I would be trying to trade him if you can get a second-round rookie pick or something like that, and just kind of hit the reset button in terms of age and production. Take a shot on guys like Elijah Moore or Terrace Marshall, guys like that in this rookie class, rather than Marvin Jones with the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's what I would be looking to do right now. Might not be able to do that. Marvin Jones might not be, commanding that type of a trade value right now, but that would be the range that I would be looking to go for. I don't really think this necessarily impacts DJ Chark, because Chark is the primary outside wide receiver. I do think that this is a negative effect for Laviska Shenault, because it's another, wide receiver, another guy to come in and steal away touches and targets from Laviska Shenault. And I just don't know how Viska is really going to be utilized in this offense. If he's the wide receiver 2 or 3 on any given week, if he gets a couple carries per game, that's great as well. But, you know, he's just going to be a guy, I feel like, who is perennially underused, and people just are like, well, if he gets utilized correctly, and I'm like, yeah, but he's not. When is he going to be? And I've never really been a Visca guy, and if you have Visca, I'd be looking to sell on some hype very, very quickly, maybe right after Trevor Lawrence gets drafted, to really, you know, finalize that piece right there, that Trevor Lawrence is their quarterback. But I would really be looking to sell Laviska Shenault personally. That it's just, he's not a guy that I've ever really been in on, and the addition of Marvin Jones, I think, hurts him even more. So moving down this list here more, there's a couple more wide receivers that we can really talk about that are super interesting. Number one, Will Fuller signing a 1-year, $10.5 million deal with Miami. I think this is really interesting because Miami has made certain moves throughout the last couple of days in a week or so to move up and down in the draft board. So they now pick at the 1.06, which is super interesting because that tells me that they want another weapon for Tua Tagovailoa to get into there. So Will Fuller, Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki, they could be looking at Kyle Pitts. Pitts has come out in his pro day saying that he has had phone calls with Brian Flores and will continue to have conversations with him. I also think that puts him in a prime position to get Jamar Chase or pair Tua back with Devonta Smith. So that would be really interesting. Ultimately, I think Will Fuller is the wide receiver one in this offense. He can create the most separation off of Devontae Parker, which Tua really likes to throw to just the straight up open guy. That was one of his problems last year, is that he would not force the ball into tighter coverage, whereas Ryan Fitzpatrick would, which kind of showed the dynamics in terms of Devontae Parker's production with and without Ryan Fitzpatrick, and with and without Tua Tagovailoa. So I think Will Fuller is going to be solid. I'm also looking to sell him as well, at least for this year. Maybe buy him back on the cheap if Miami is not producing all too much like what Tua was last year. And so therefore Will Fuller is not producing as much as he was last year with Deshaun Watson. And then potentially maybe re-buying him back before he enters free agency again in 2022. But he is an explosive guy. I don't think that 70 for 1,000 and 7-8 touchdowns again is out of the range of opportunities for Will Fuller, like it is for Kenny Golladay with Daniel Jones, which would make him a solid wide receiver too. I just feel like there's going to be really explosive peak weeks and then really down weeks. And so if you're not into that kind of thing, you're not really going to like Will Fuller. Although you might not have liked Will Fuller anyway before last year, where he really shined as the wide receiver one in Houston. So maybe you already don't have him if you're not that type of a wide receiver guy. I don't know. The next interesting wide receiver on here would be Corey Davis, signing a 4-year, $25.5 million deal with the New York Jets. I think this is super interesting because Davis has always been a role player. At least that's where the most production of his has come out, being the wide receiver 2 across from A.J. Brown. He didn't really succeed as the wide receiver 1, although I myself, as a Corey Davis truther, still put that on Marcus Mariota. But Davis at least has shown that he can be very viable across from another strong weapon. And so Davis, at least coming in here to this Jets team, I think is one of the most productive and veteran wide receivers in that group with Jamison Crowder. And Crowder and Davis, I feel like, are kind of similar wide receivers in terms of production and fantasy production. And so it would really be interesting to see if Denzel Mims is the guy that takes that next step in year 2 in this Jets offense, where Mims can be kind of like the 1A and Corey Davis being the 1B, with Jamison Crowder running slot with the New York Jets. I don't know. It remains to be seen if Sam Darnold is still the quarterback, if it's Justin Fields, if it's Zach Wilson, what they're doing at the 1.02 slot. But I do think it's interesting that Corey Davis decided to go with a 4-year deal with the New York Jets for, basically $6 million a year to really go to a team that doesn't have all too bright of a future, at least right now. That could really change depending on how that rookie quarterback plays if they do go that route. But I don't know, like this one for fantasy doesn't feel like it really did all too much because Corey Davis already wasn't, a very strong wide receiver option. He was a flex option for you for fantasy last year with the Tennessee Titans. And I don't really know what this does to change that. I don't think it hurts him all too much, but I don't think it's a net positive for Corey Davis. A couple other names I want to mention just before I quickly run down through the rest of these picks. Curtis Samuel, 3-year, $35 million deal with the Washington football team. I think this is really interesting because it pairs Curtis Samuel back with Ron Rivera, who was the coach for Carolina during Curtis Samuel's early years in the NFL, as the wide receiver 2 on that team, across from Terry McLaurin with Logan Thomas as well. And then obviously Ryan Fitzpatrick signing that 1-year deal with Washington too. So now that team is actually very, very dynamic. You got Ryan Fitzpatrick, the old aged gunslinger who just wants to chuck the ball. Antonio Gibson out of the backfield. You got Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, who's like a running back wide receiver hybrid. Logan Thomas, who's like a lighter version of Darren Waller, quarterback convert. So this is a super interesting and athletic, speedy offense that could be really, really fun to watch and be fun for fantasy football. I'm really interested in what Curtis Samuel is actually utilized as in Washington with Ron Rivera, because Rivera was the coach in Carolina who we had problems with Curtis Samuel's utilization there as well. But it was an air yards type of a situation for Curtis Samuel. It was always talked about where he had all these air yards but was never able to produce on those because Kyle Allen wasn't good. Once Cam Newton left, there was that whole talk and whatnot that if they got a better quarterback, Curtis Samuel could be really, really good in that role with the air yards role that he was never able to convert and produce with Kyle Allen. And so if that's the role that he maintains with Washington, I think that would be really, really interesting for him with Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I think is a much better quarterback than Kyle Allen. So overall, I think this was a positive for Curtis Samuel. It's at least being viewed as a positive for him throughout the entire industry and community. So it might give you an opportunity for a sell high on him if you're not necessarily invested all too much in what Curtis Samuel has to offer. But other than that, I feel like there is going to be a lot of hype continuing for him moving on throughout the rest of the offseason into the summer and then eventually into 2021 NFL season. So if you want to hold on to that value and see what you have in Curtis Samuel, I'm all for it. If you want to trade him and kind of get a sell high for him because you're not necessarily sure what he's going to be in Washington, I'm all for that as well too. John Brown signed a 1-year, $3.75 million deal with the Las Vegas Raiders after being released by the Buffalo Bills. And coincidentally, the Bills then turned around and signed a 1-year, $6 million deal with Emmanuel Sanders. So those two wide receivers, aging vets, kind of still have a little bit of explosiveness to them. I think is super interesting. I'm not really in all too much on Emmanuel Sanders. I think that was just kind of a vet move to get another guy in there, maybe to help Gabe Davis move along in terms of his progression. And then John Brown with the Raiders, I'm not really sure what's going on there either because he seems like a Henry Ruggs type of a guy, and they weren't able to utilize Henry Ruggs correctly outside just running straight 9 routes down the field. And that's not really Derek Carr's game. So overall, I think if this is going to be the Raiders edition, stocks up for Darren Waller if they're not going to bring in more, immediate competition for Darren Waller because he's just going to have 140, 150 targets again. Emmanuel Sanders, don't really know all too much what to do with him. I feel like the most immediate impact would be that he holds back Gabe Davis, at least initially. And then I feel like Cole Beasley might have a pretty strong showing off the rip because he was pretty productive without John Brown last year, and just might end up being the de facto wide receiver 2 in that offense, at least initially to start out the 2021 year. T.Y. Hilton signed a 1-year, $10 million deal with the Colts to stay there. I feel like that stays pretty status quo for him with Carson Wentz as well. So I'm fine with holding on to T.Y. Hilton. I don't think you can get anything for him. You might have to just kind of ride him into the sunset like you would have Larry Fitzgerald. So that's kind of what you're going with there for T.Y. Hilton, who did have some pretty solid showings at the end of the year last year for fantasy football and could continue to do that again with Carson Wentz, who does like to sling the ball, especially a lot more and a lot stronger than Phillip Rivers did last year. AJ Green signed a 1-year, $8 million deal with the Cardinals. I think this is super interesting because it's another veteran presence for Kyler Murray. So net positive for Murray. Wide receiver wise, obviously this isn't going to affect Hopkins. This might affect Christian Kirk. Kirk has been a guy over the last couple of years that everybody's been kind of waiting for him to break out. He hasn't really done anything yet. He's shown flashes, but he hasn't been consistent over a course of even half of a season or so. So I think this hurts Christian Kirk as well. If you're waiting for him to do something, I think you're just going to keep on waiting. AJ Green, not really sure what to do with him again, like me, might be a T.Y. Hilton, Larry Fitzgerald kind of thing. You're riding him into the sunset because you're not getting anything for him. Nelson Aguilar signed a 2-year, $26 million deal with the New England Patriots. I think this is super interesting because he is going to be like the wide receiver 1A, 1B with N'Keal Harry. Was actually pretty solid last year with the Vegas Raiders. Had 5 for 50 or 60 and a touchdown or whatnot over a few weeks. So I remember, DFS, he was pretty solid in a handful of weeks because he was super cheap and really outperformed his DFS price in DraftKings and stuff. And it might be the same situation in New England, although I'm not really sure what the overall production might be at the year's end because Cam Newton is not really a passer anymore, and especially because they also added JuJu Smith and Hunter Henry. So, Aguilar is just going to be like that gross guy that you have on your roster that nobody really wants because he still has that Philadelphia stink on him. And he didn't really do much overall over the course of the year with the Raiders last year outside of a handful of games. And so being the wide receiver 1A, 1B to Cam Newton doesn't sound all too appetizing right now either, especially when being the wide receiver 1A, 1B might be third or fourth on the totem pole behind the tight ends. Doesn't really speak all too well for Nelson Aguilar, but it was an interesting contract, and outside of Kenny Golladay seems to be the most paid wide receiver in this class. So there's at least that there. 2 other wide receivers signed with the Detroit Lions: Brashad Perriman, 1 year, $2.5 million, and Tyrel Williams, 1 year, $4 million. I think both are super interesting because either one of those guys can come out as the wide receiver 1 for Jared Goff. They don't have anybody else on that offense besides Quintez Cephas, basically. And so I could really see both or either one of them having, spike weeks throughout the year. And if it was my pick, it would be Brashad Perriman, a guy who showcased well with Jameis Winston at the end of the 2019 season. Didn't really do much, although he had Sam Darnold and whatnot in New York and Adam Gase and all that. So I think Perriman would be my pick of the two. Tyrell Williams also showcased a lot of skill and stuff with the Chargers back with Phillip Rivers a couple years ago. Whenever Keenan Allen got hurt, Tyrell Williams was a wide receiver 2 from the week 3 on after Keenan Allen got hurt that one year. So pretty solid production out of both of them, at least flashes and whatnot. So I like I said, if I had to pick one, it would be Perriman. Both of those guys might be on your waiver wires potentially, and both are definitely worth a pickup just to see what happens with this Lions offense, because if they don't add anybody, at least for significant competition, especially at the 107, if they're not drafting Chase or Smith or Kyle Pitts again, then they could just roll with the 2.07 and see what they get there. But I feel like at least one of them might end up with pretty solid production at the end of the year in 2021. So it'll be interesting to see how this Lions offense actually plays out throughout the year. Finally, Sammy Watkins, 1 year, $6 million deal with the Baltimore Ravens. This is kind of whatever to me. I don't ultimately really care about this because I don't really care about Sammy Watkins. I don't really care about Baltimore Ravens pass catchers outside of Hollywood Brown. And even then, I really don't care all too much. So I think what this does do, though, if you are a Hollywood Brown owner, is potentially prevent them from drafting someone significant and bringing in more significant competition for Hollywood, which would be very good because they already have a small pie in terms of pass attempts. And so Hollywood's getting a very small pass attempt target share pie of that. And if they bring in any more, he's sharing that small pie, making his pie even smaller. And there's a lot of pie references here. But ultimately, it would not be a good thing for Hollywood if they brought in more pass catchers. So Sammy might prevent that. Maybe not, because it's only a 1 year deal and they want to bring in someone more significant for down the road. But that remains to be seen. I would be selling Hollywood Brown. Not really into that. I would be selling him. Then finally, just to close this out, Allen Robinson and Chris Godwin both signed their franchise tags, so they are both on their same teams for 2021. And then obviously will be free agents next year unless they're tagged again, but I highly doubt it. So both of those guys, along with JuJu and Will Fuller and Sammy Watkins again, they all become free agents next year. So next year's class is going to be really, really cool and really fun as well. Hopefully a little bit more fun than it was this year with an increased salary cap. Then as of this recording, at least, Antonio Brown, Larry Fitzgerald, Golden Tate, Alshon Jeffrey, a handful of other wide receivers still are unsigned. So, I mean, Antonio Brown, I think, would be really interesting to see where he ultimately ends up. Maybe he goes back to Tampa Bay. Maybe he goes to Seattle or somewhere else that would be looking to get Antonio Brown type of a player and his explosiveness and production still, just as a role player, not really playing the one piece that he was in Pittsburgh. Wasn't even getting that in Tampa Bay. But, you know, a wide receiver 3 Antonio Brown is a pretty solid wide receiver core for whatever team might actually end up signing him. So I'm interested to see ultimately where he might end up, and then we can talk about that later on when it happens. So I'm sorry, I know this was a long video. I tried to keep it short and just run down through it, but there's a lot of wide receivers in this free agent class. So I appreciate all y'all sticking with me throughout this entire video. Thank you for tuning in. Please hit that subscribe button, like this video, ring that notifications bell to be notified every single time that we drop a new YouTube video. And with that all being said, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll catch you all later.